James Dean sat in the corner of a dimly lit acting studio, a cigarette loosely hanging from his fingers. The room hummed with the chatter of aspiring actors, but James was lost in thought. Today's exercise was a challenging scene from A Streetcar Named Desire. As he delivered his lines, his voice wavered between defiance and despair, captivating the room. His vulnerability felt too real, almost uncomfortable to witness. For James, acting wasn't just a craft, it was an outlet for his internal struggles. As the instructor called time, James remained seated, his gaze distant, already wrestling with the ghosts of his past. Back in his modest apartment, James paced the small living room, a crumpled letter in his hand. It was from his father, a man whose approval he had chased all his life but never received. The letter remained unread, its contents already heavy in James's mind. Disappointment, criticism, perhaps even pity. He tossed it onto the table and sighed deeply. His roommate, another struggling actor, glanced up from a dog-eared script. "You okay, Jimmy?" he asked. James shrugged, lighting another cigarette. "He'll never get it," he muttered. The apartment was sparse, just a couch, a table, and a single lamp casting long shadows. It mirrored James's life, bare yet filled with unspoken depth. Later that night, James sat by the window staring at the glowing city below. He thought about Indiana, where his dreams began, and the long road that had brought him here. "I'll show him," James whispered to himself, his voice tinged with both determination and sadness. "I'll show the world." The set of Rebel Without a Cause was a whirlwind of chaos. Crew members scrambled to adjust lighting while James stood by, quietly observing. He thrived in the intensity, his creativity ignited by the disorder. Between takes, James often retreated to a quiet corner, scribbling in a notebook filled with sketches and notes. One afternoon, Salmoneo approached him. "Hey, Jimmy, why so serious all the time?" he teased. James glanced up, smirking faintly. "Just thinking," he replied cryptically. Sal laughed. "You're always thinking." But it wasn't just thought, it was feeling. Every scene James acted in came from a deeply personal place. His co-stars admired his intensity, but they also felt a distance, as if James was walking a tightrope between reality and the characters he inhabited. That day, James delivered one of his most iconic lines, his voice raw and trembling. The director called, "Cut!" and applauded. But James remained in the moment, lost in the emotions he had summoned. When the pressures of Hollywood became unbearable, James turned to his Porsche for solace. The car wasn't just a vehicle, it was an extension of his soul. Driving offered him a freedom that the glitz and glamour of his career never could. On a rare day off, James took to the open road, the wind whipping through his hair as he sped along winding highways. He stopped at a small roadside diner, a place untouched by Hollywood's artificiality. The waitress recognized him instantly. "You're James Dean," she said, her voice filled with awe. James smiled, signing a napkin for her before slipping back into the driver's seat. As the sun dipped below the horizon, James felt a rare sense of peace, but it was fleeting. The road ahead, though thrilling, was dangerous, a metaphor for his life. "You live fast, you die fast," he once joked. It was a line that would later feel hauntingly prophetic. During the filming of Giant, James often withdrew between scenes, sitting alone under the vast Texan sky. The sprawling landscape reminded him of Indiana, of simpler times before the weight of fame bore down on him. Co-star Elizabeth Taylor noticed his somber mood one day and approached him. "You okay, Jimmy?" she asked, handing him a water bottle. James nodded, flashing a fleeting smile. "Just tired," he replied. But the truth was more complex. Fame had given him everything he'd dreamed of, yet it felt hollow. The constant attention, the pressure to be perfect, it was suffocating. On set, James poured his struggles into his performance. Each line he delivered carried the weight of his personal battles, leaving the cast and crew in awe. "He doesn't act, he becomes," one co-star remarked. But for James, the transformation came at a cost. Every role he played seemed to chip away at him, leaving pieces of himself scattered behind. The morning of September 30th, 1955, began like any other. James was excited about an upcoming race, chatting with friends about his Porsche. Natalie Wood, ever protective, gave him a worried glance. "Jimmy, promise me you'll drive carefully," she urged. James laughed, brushing off her concern. Relax, Nat, I'll be fine. I'll be. With his mechanic in the passenger seat, James set off, the roar of the engine echoing down the road. The open highway stretched ahead, a symbol of possibility and freedom. But as dusk fell, a split-second collision brought everything to a halt. News of James's death spread like wildfire, shocking Hollywood and the world. Fans gathered at theaters showing East of Eden and Rebel Without a Cause, lighting candles in his memory. Co-stars and directors mourned not just a talented actor, but a soul gone too soon. He lived like a flame, one director said, bright and fast, and then he was gone. James Dean's untimely death only cemented his status as a cultural icon. His films, though few, became timeless classics, capturing the essence of a generation. Young men copied his style, donning leather jackets and jeans, while young women adored his brooding charm. Decades after his passing, James's influence extended beyond cinema. Musicians wrote songs about him, artists painted his likeness, and writers immortalized his story in books. To many, he represented rebellion and authenticity in a world that often demanded conformity. In a small Indiana museum dedicated to his life, a visitor once remarked, "He was more than an actor. He was a symbol of hope for those who feel lost." It was a sentiment shared by fans across the globe. For James, acting wasn't just a career. It was a way of connecting, of showing the world his vulnerable, unpolished truth. And that vulnerability made him eternal. James Dean's story is one of passion, rebellion, and a relentless pursuit of authenticity. Though his life was tragically short, his impact continues to ripple through generations. James taught us that it's okay to be vulnerable, that our struggles can fuel our art, and that true freedom comes from embracing who we are. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold tales of legendary Hollywood stars. Let James Dean's story remind us all to live boldly and authentically, even in the face of life's uncertainties.